Hey there, welcome back again to the channel. So we're going to check on a recent MTGO standard tournament, and surprisingly we have this list as it finished first in a pool of 73 players. So the player with the username Daniel Lacos has played this Redek wins, and for this video is sort of also a semi-deck update of the build and what would be its alignment in the current standard metagame as you go to play in your respective RCQ or regional champs qualifiers in your major local game stores around. So we're going to do a quick rundown of the cards. We have 21 creatures, 4 enchantments, 12 instants, 23 lands, and a sideboard of 15, including a sort of the I don't see if it's a semi deck or card tech, but we'll see how it goes in a bit. So we're going to go first with the usual lineup of the deck. So we can see here that we still have Monastery Sphere, but surprisingly he is only using 3 copies. I don't know why. Maybe he got less of the cards, but since this is just an uncommon, I'm surely 4 copies would be the best choice, but I'm not sure, so we don't really need to question him since he's already in the first place. And we also have 2 copies of Phoenix Chick, so two of this aggro and the sort of a efficient one drop in the build is very important. And so we're going to go next with the 2 drops. We have a few variants here. We have 3 Charming Skalds, a copy of Feldon Runum Excavator, and some playset, or basically a playset of Bloodthirst Adversary. So this now has seen to rose in the price, and we are now really seeing here as its variable or measurable 2 drop and sort of a 5 drop with this ability that you can sort of kick it for paying this one and putting up some sound counter on it, and having also for you to play your instants and sorcery cards with mana value 3 or less for free from your graveyard. So with that setup, we check again why Charming Scoundrel would be essential as a 2 drop here as compared to only a copy of Feldon. So you check its abilities. It can discard a card and draw a card, so very nice. It can also create a treasure token to ramp to your bigger creatures, and also creating a wicked roll token attached to a creature you control. So either of these 3 would really make sure that you can still have board advantage and card advantage, makes so in your curve for an aggro curve aspect impacts. And so again, Feldon can also same kind of give you card advantage, because when it's dealt damage, you can exile many cards from the top of the library, and then you can choose one of them, and then until the end of your next turn, you can play that card. Now for the 3 drops, we have again 3 copies of Godric Cloak Reveler. This is more of the usual lineup now of this build, and along with the 3 copies of Squee, the obvious Monarch, to make sure that you can have this uh, consistent 3 drop race as to how these cards would also get you to cast it and attack at the same time. And the benefit of it is that you can still trigger here the celebration as long as 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battle under your control. Godric is becoming to be that of a 4/4 dragon that can also have good mana sync with the pump. And given also with Squee that can also produce tokens, it's some kind of also triggering the celebration ability of that of Godric. And so Squee can also be used in the late game by casting it from the graveyard by paying 3, paying 4 and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard rather than paying its mana cost. So 2 efficient 3 drops and can be curved out with a 4 drop with a copy of Thundering Raiju. So more of these can also have extra damage whenever each modified creature you control other than Thundering Raiju, and can also place up a +1% counter on target creature you control whenever it attacks. Now for that kind of setup, which is kind of we can say as generic, but at the same time efficient in terms of giving the late game up to the mid from mid game perhaps, as we can still have some of these burn spells cast to the dome for final damage, and also resilient creatures and can also bypass most of your opponent's blockers. Now for the pseudo one drop of this deck is of course the 4 copies of Kumano faces Kakasan. No other question out of it because it can deal damage, can put counters on creatures you control, and then can also have this effect that can exile sources damage by your sources you control whenever they die. So those die triggers happen, and they would be exiled instead. Now for the instance, this come as generic. We have 4 Play with Fire. We have also 4 copies of Lightning Strike and 3 copies of Witch-Talker Frenzy. So the build has focused more of not only having to provide cheap spot removals and burn spells, but also the solid Frenzy is now being main deck as to go to dealing 5 damage to the creature. So this also would benefit you because it would cost less for each creature that attacked its turn. So we given so, the good target here would be Shieldred, another 5 toughness or lesser creature of that of your opponent. And the lone copy of Monster's Rage can also good to have, adding a roll token for the monster roll and also pumping a creature you control, and can also deal a huge chunk of damage with that when you target a Monastery Switch Spear, for example. Now for the lands, since you can see here, these are the usual. We have 23 lands in total, but utilizing 2 Suken Sands to make sure those extra copy would also be used to create these tokens that can also trigger Godric. And of course, 3 copies of Measure's Boundaries and added attacker as can also be activated to become a 2/2 assembly worker if a creature token, and also be used for extra damage in the mid game and late game. Now for the quick check of the sideboard, we have basically having these 4 copies of the Lithomantic Barrage because it's important in the matchups of the Raffin and the Soldier's deck. As you can see that we should need to have a solid 1 mana and 5 damage to deal with those efficient creatures. At the same time, they can also clear a way for your creatures to attack against their defense. And the good thing on this is that it's only cheap and can't be countered. So most of their matchups, probably with the soldiers, are those cards that you're using with counter spells that can counter any of your spot removals. And so this can basically bypass them as to for that lineup. And in the support of that, we also considered 2 copies of End of Festivities. This would go with the creatures, or you can see that if you're familiar with the Boros Convoke deck, then this would be your best sideboard against them, as they will be able to create this random bunch of 1/1 goblins, and other creatures are also 1/1. You can just use End of Festivities to deal with them for that kind of matchup. And of course, the only thing I've said earlier is that Urba's Forge might be very slow for this kind of build, but I think this would be efficient for the late game setup because it can produce at the beginning of combat a continuous attacker in the form of an X1 red Phyrexian horror creature token with trample and haste. And as long as the game forbids to go with more oil counters, then the power would increase for those number. And so this would be efficient if your opponents has using mass removals such as Sunfall or spot removals, and wiping off your initial creatures, but you still have a forge to go with dealing some of the final damage if needed against those matchup. And also in the support of that, if you're facing those kind of decks, we have 2 Furnace Punisher here that can go with sort of punishing those decks. Best example will be against Esper, since they usually don't have 2 or more basic lands. Then having this creature in play would also have them deal extra 2 damage against them. And for the control matchup also, we can consider Jaya Free Negotiator and Koth Fire Resistance as a one of each copy that can basically get you some card advantage. Can also create some army of 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess, and maybe an emblem per se if you're going with the late game as the situation arise. And of course, caught fire resistance can filter out the library and can also deal damage to a creature equal to the number of mountains you control and have you an emblem for this kind of setup. In addition, support our spot removals. We have additional Witch Stalker Frenzy in the sideboard. Also, Thundering Raidus, we're going with the mid-game matchup as to you need to have more creatures attacking your opponent and in particularly creatures with haste to be that more efficient. So that's your sideboard. Last but not the least are your average mana value. You can see that's almost 1.7 or almost 2 on the average mana. You can see a lot of 2 drops and 1 drops here. And you can also notice here that you're basically having this kind of cards that you can just curve out on 3 mana and you're good to go with your setup. Of course, card distribution is only red since this is just a mono red kind of deck. And surprisingly, we have a lot of tokens here. We have 9. Extras are the emblem, or is 2 for Jaya and Koth. So token is Goblin token uh, from what's this? Squee, again, sorry for that. Monk token from Jaya. We have a Monster Roll token, Fraction Horror from the Forge, Sokensan Spirit tokens, Treasure token again, and a Wicked Roll token from the Charming Scoundrel. So I think that's pretty much it for this deck. Congratulations to Sir Oden de la Cos for winning this MTGO League tournament, having to garner first place and facing a metagame of Esper, Blue Black, Domain, and other specific top tier archetypes. It's proven that the mono red is still winning as per its name, as the red deck wins in the current standard format metagame. So I guess that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for checking this one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, as we still have more of these deck tech videos in the future as we check on some major tournaments online and in local face-to-face games here and abroad. Thank you guys for checking this one and see you on the next video.